kind of start treating your crown like royalty.
All right, all right, all right. Peace, family. Peace, family. We got another banger for you. I'm hoping you guys are ready for tonight. Got a dope lineup for you guys. Uh, what I would consider a very controversial topic, a topic that usually breeds a lot of controversy. There are a lot of people that offer different opinions as to a lot of different areas of the Bible. One in particular, which I think has been the center of controversy for quite some time now, is Cain, the seed of the serpent, or the serpent seed doctrine. And people who wonder uh, as to whether or not Cain is actually the son of Adam and Eve, or Adam, versus the son of Nakash, or versus the son of Satan. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. But before we do that, I want to introduce my brother, Chief Uziel, a brother I know for a very long time now. Some of you, most of you who know me should be familiar with him. He pretty much gave me a great light in the Israelite community, shined a lot of light on me, especially in times where I had it pretty tough out here. So I'm always appreciative to this brother. I regard this brother as a big brother, a dear brother, a confidant, and even a friend. I introduce to you my brother Chief Uziel of DCB, Congregation Da'at Chachma Webina. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Shalom, shalom, my brother. Shalom to all the listening audience out there. Giving glory to the supreme intellect of the universe, Yehovah. Thanking the creator for all things and everything. And I'm grateful to be here with my brother Zion Lex. I know him as Chief Avdiel, but the world knows him as Zion Lex. And I'm grateful to get into this topic, which is a topic of great controversy within our community. But nonetheless, we're going to tackle it and we're going to talk about it. And then hopefully we could get some healthy debate. Maybe we could he's the debater. I'm not the debater. He's the public debater. So hopefully we could get some people to come out and maybe we could get some healthy debates within the Israelite community on things that we might not see eye to eye with, but nonetheless need to be discussed and not let it be a bloodletting or anything like that. Just have a healthy debate and see where it could take us. But definitely a topic that needs to be tackled and needs to be talked about because there are a lot of things, a lot of different things that people teach. So we're going to try to get into it tonight. And mainly I'm trying to ask. I have an opinion on the as we know at the beginning, but I know that my brother Zion Lex is going to get into more detail of what it means and where certain teachings come from and so forth and so on. So, my brother, send it back to you.
Absolutely, Black. Absolutely. So if I could ask you briefly, Chief, if you could remember, not necessarily an exact date and time, but how far back would you say would be pretty much the first time that you encountered hearing or being acquainted with the serpent seed doctrine? Is this something new, or is this something that you've been hearing for years?
From when I came into this way of life about 32 years ago, since I heard the beginning story of the Genesis, the Bereshit story, my teachers pretty much have been hammering us with telling us about this doctrine that was out there. And it's, it came from certain people that we loved in the community that are good people, that are good men, but nonetheless it was a topic of controversy that the teachers that I came from didn't necessarily agree with that concept of the Cain being the seed of the serpent or some other things that have transpired from that period of time that has developed from that story. So needless to say, there was a difference in opinions, and that's how it's been for years, at least for the 30 some odd years that I've been in this way of life. It's been like that. So I mean, there's some brothers that we love, but we could agree to disagree when it comes to certain topics and certain understandings of Torah.
That's a fact. I have to agree with you 100% on that. That's a fact. As brothers in the truth, we have some core values, some core ideas that we share in common, but we're not going to always see eye to eye on everything that's occurring in the Torah, and that's okay because I believe, and I know you believe, that allows for healthy dialogue because no one man has all the answers.
Absolutely.
So, all of us coming with different ideas, or i.e., brotherhood, helps to further our understanding. So, even though some of our positions on Torah might be diametrically opposed or different, I appreciate them all because I think that iron sharpens iron, and we could use those differences to become stronger in our truth.
Absolutely. It's like I tell people, right? We don't have to agree. As for example, like me and you don't agree on everything. I might
Right.
have an understanding of something, you have an understanding on something, but it doesn't make us enemies, and we're still great brothers. So that's that. We just want to get to the bottom of this and try to get some understanding, because there are a lot of things that are put out there that sometimes people might be lost, and people might not understand the way someone is trying to break something down. So that's why we're here.
Okay, perfect, perfect. All right, so I'm about to share my screen. And just before I do that, I want to just make sure that the family is doing what we got to do on our end to get this information out. So, family, we know what to do. Thumb up the video, family, and share the live. If you're watching the live stream, everybody should be smashing that like button. Share the live. Make sure that you share the link on all your social media platforms. I heard Facebook is up again. I heard Instagram is working again. They sorted out, so let's get it in. They sorted out, let's get it in. Let's get these notifications on Facebook. Let's get these notifications going on Instagram, family. The more people can be exposed to this experience, the greater of a dialogue that it will be. And to everybody in the building, and especially our moderators, be on guard. We want to make sure that this is a brotherly and a sisterly and a family environment. So, when people come in, or if people come in with their ways, and we know how people can get, I say to all the moderators, let your block hand fly. Let your block hand fly. We don't allow for anybody to disrespect what we have here. So, if it gets out of hand, let your block hand fly. All right? Let your block hand fly. With that being said, I'm ready. I'm ready. So, here is how I want to start off the dialogue, right? I want to ask the live stream to join us with just a couple of series of questions, right? The first question that I have for the live stream is, do you believe that Cain is the son of Adam? Do you believe that Cain is the son or the seed of Adam? Where are we at in the live stream with that? Is, what do we believe, or what are we saying about Cain? Is Cain the son of Adam? And if not, then who? Is there anyone here that disagrees? So far, I'm seeing everybody say yeah. I know in the Israelite community, there are some conflicting views with regard to that question, right? We all know that. So what are some of the views with regard to that? Does anybody stand on the diametrically opposed side? Is anybody opposed to that idea? All right, so how many of you have heard, right, that Cain is the seed of the serpent? If you have heard that before, type a 1 in the comment section. If you've heard before that Cain is in fact the seed of the serpent, please type that in the comment section. I just want to check the temperature in the room so I know how to proceed. All right, so most of you have heard that. Most of you have heard that. So as you should know, this is a very widespread idea and even teaching. There are a lot of people who teach this, not just in the Afrocentric Israelite community, but there are people that even teach this among Europeans, among European Jewry, and even among European, and especially, I can say, among European Christendom. Among European Christendom. So we find this replete throughout the Abrahamic round tables, whether it be Christianity or whether it be in the form of Judaism via European Jewry. All right. With that being said, I'm going to open up my PowerPoint for y'all so you guys can check this out real quick. Give me a couple seconds to share.
Chief, can I just share like the basic idea of
Oh yeah, please.
of what some of the doctrine is? Is basically like you said that Cain is the seed of the serpent, of the Nachash that was in the garden at that time. Also, the concept of Hawa being the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life, that like I said earlier, that Adam or is not the father of Cain, right? And that the Nakash in the garden itself is a celestial, or how would I say it? A divine being, being a celestial being that I guess came from heaven, and that this celestial being is basically who impregnated Kawa, and from that mixture we get Cain. So these are some of the points that are out there. These are some of the arguments that are out there, and that basically the celestial and the terrestrial were basically mingling at the beginning. And I think these are some of the concepts that are out there. So just as to clarify a little bit some of the arguments that are out there. And as we go on and we read, we're going to see some more things might pop up that I might remember. But that is the basis of this conversation, I believe.
That's right. If I could read from some of the comment section, this one we got as well. Somebody wrote, Warren Tellisford wrote, my grandfather thought my mom's that, plus my wife that's Christian believed that as well. He said my grandfather taught my mother that, plus my wife that's Christian believed that as well. So yeah, there's some people that definitely believe that. Malka Bat Yisrael says, I've only heard it from the Europeans. Yes, and there are definitely Israelite communities and Israelite teachers who also teach that as well. And the aim tonight is to kind of get into the genesis, the beginning. Where does that teaching arise from? Where's that teaching source? Because if we're to truly understand what that teaching is saying, it's important to source it. It's very, very important to source it. So that's exactly what we're going to do. All right. That's exactly what we're going to do.
Oh, and also another one that I forgot a long, long time ago that used to be taught was that Cain is not only the seed of the serpent, but that was also where the Caucasian man came from. That's another one. That the Caucasian was the seed of the serpent. That was another one that I heard throughout the years.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard that too.
Right. Thus the white man is the devil. That's what.
The white man is the devil.
Right.
In fact, I believe the Nation of Islam still teaches that.
Right.
That Cain and his seed are essentially white people.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, let me share my screen.
So yeah, let's get into it.
All right. So I entitled tonight's live stream, The Serpent Seed Doctrine Exposed. If anybody's wondering as to the choice of words, what I'm exposing is the source, right? I'm not exposing anyone that teaches it. I'm exposing the source. I'm revealing or exposing where that teaching is sourced. I want to be very, very clear on that from the outset, because some of the people over the years, as my brother Chief Uziel said, who have been teaching this are people that I have a great deal of respect for. So what's being exposed is the source of the doctrine and not necessarily the teachers of it. I don't think anybody is out here aiming to mislead people or to beguile and deceive people. I simply think that we have differences of views when it comes to the same subject matters. And it's about time that we start addressing them openly and publicly and dialoguing about them as a family. So that's what today is about. And here we go. So as you guys can see literally on my screen, you literally could see, let me go to the next slide. There's a book entitled Cain as Serpent Seed of Satan. That's Cain as the serpent seed of Satan. What a lot of people are unaware of is that the notion or the idea that Cain is the seed of the serpent, it's not an idea that is new. It's not an idea that just came about. It's an idea that's been around for quite some time. For quite some time, there have been a lot of people in recent history, and when I say recent history, I'm talking about right in the Israelite community that have been teaching this thing. So if we're going to come to the understanding of it, the first thing that we should try to do is buckle down and find out where this began, right? Who were some of the first people teaching this? So that's why it's proper to start here. It literally says Cain as the seed of the serpent. Let me move on. This is volume 1 by Ken Ami. By Ken Ami. Now, if we were to open the story of in the Bible with regard to Cain and Abel, it would read on this wise. Allow me to pull it up. We'll pull it up so that we can read it in both the English as well as the original Hebrew. So just give me a couple of moments in time to pull that up. All right. And you guys should now be able to see. There you go. You should be able to see that. Let me see if I could blow it up some more so it could be nice and big. And how is that? Nice and big, right?
That looks great.
All right. All right.
You're going to Genesis 4, right?
Mm-hmm. So it reads, and Adam knew Chawa, Ishto, his wife, and she bore and she bore unto him Qayin or Cain, saying, I have acquired a man with the Creator. I have acquired a man with the Creator. I have acquired a man with the Creator. So from the outset, just looking at the very first sentence, and I'm going to also read that in English, it says, now the man knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gained or acquired a male child with the help of the Lord, with the help of the Lord. Now, from a strictly Hebraic sense, I just have to quantify that sometimes when the Hebrew text is translated into English, there are things that are added to the English that are not necessarily there in the Hebrew. For instance, the word help is just not there in Hebrew, right? It simply says in Hebrew, Watomer Kwaniti Ish et Yehovah. Ish et Yehovah, with the Lord, not with the help of the Lord. So that's added, I guess, to make it make sense from an English perspective. But in the Hebrew, it just simply says with the Lord, right? And from the outset, you see that Adam is going into Eve, and the Torah literally says, and she conceived and bore Cain. So from the outset, the Torah is critically clear on the notion that Adam is the inspiration behind the birth of Canaan. because it literally says Adam knew, Yada'a, he knew, et Chawa, Ishto, his wife Chawa or Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have acquired a man with the Lord. I have acquired a man with the Lord, which is a very, very, to me, significant statement. There's so many things that can possibly be unpacked there, but in the most essential, literal way of looking at it, it's clear from the very first sentence that Adam is the father of Cain. Period. Period. No other way to get around it. If Adam was not the father of Cain, or if Adam is not the father of Cain, then this sentence should not have been worded this way. This
Right.
entire, what's your thoughts on that, Chief?
Absolutely, because it says here, if I go back to what you said, and the man knew Eve, his wife. He knew her in the sense of biblically knowing. He laid with her. He had sex with her, right? And she conceived, which is very important, right? The word for conceive, I believe, is watahar, right? Watahar, which means she became pregnant or she conceived, right? So I think that's the most important thing when we think of what happened. The man, Adam, he knew. We know that Adam is the man, right? He knew his wife and she conceived. That's plain. That's not conjecture. That's just straight to the point, literal, right? And I think that's very important when we get into this discussion, to where I think some people overlook. Hello?
Okay, absolutely. Yes, yes.
Right.
Okay, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
a very, very important dialogue, right? It's
Right.
a very, very important dialogue, and there's a lot of things, as you noted, which are overlooked in this sense or in this context. There's a lot of
Right.
things which are overlooked. So if we look at the word yada'a, and it just allow me to pull out the dictionary real quick. I'm grabbing for the etymological dictionary of biblical Hebrew, and let me just change the screen so people can see what that looks like. That's this book, the etymological dictionary of biblical Hebrew. Um, this dictionary is used to study Hebrew root words. It gives you the root for every single Hebrew root word or every single Hebrew word that's in the Bible, in the Torah. So every single Hebrew word in the Torah, all of those roots are shared in this book, and the etymology is discussed. And there's a Torah-based portion that it traces you back to. So there's a link in this book as every explanation plays out that brings you right back to the Torah to show you the meanings etymologically of all of the roots for every single word that appears in the Torah. What I'm looking up now is the word da'at or da'a, which is the root of the word that is used here for to describe sexual union between Adam and Eve. And I'm looking it up just so that we could be clear on what's occurring here. All right. So just give me a couple seconds to pull this out. I'm doing this on the fly. I didn't intend to pull out the dictionary, but in this moment, I said, you know what? It'll probably be helpful to add the rudimentary dictionary element so as to give people a stronger understanding of what's happening. So give me a couple more seconds. And okay. On page 101, it says Yada'a denotes knowing, recognizing, acknowledging, informing, knowledge, even an oracle consulting the dead, a confidant, a thought, as well as union. Union, Union, union or unification. So the Hebrew word da'at in Hebrew is one of three cognitive ideations when it comes to how we conceive of the Torah. When we speak of our when we speak of our how would you say? How would I word this? When you speak of our acquisition of Torah-based information, we speak about the acquisition of wisdom, which is chakmah. We speak about the acquisition of binah, which is understanding. We also speak about the final one, which is da'at. And it's always in that order, right? King Solomon always has that wisdom is always first. Wisdom is always the beginning. Right after that is understanding, and then finally knowledge. I believe he says in the Proverbs, with wisdom a house is built, right? With understanding it is established, and with knowledge its rooms are filled, right? Having said that, knowledge, or da'at in Hebrew, is what is referred to as the confluence between wisdom or understanding. Literally meaning it is that which unites or bridges the gap between wisdom and understanding. So whenever you see the term da'at in Hebrew, which we translate as knowledge, it represents a bridge or a unifier. A bridge or a unifier, or i.e., union. It represents the union of someone or something. It represents intellectual union, as in the joining of wisdom and understanding, or it can represent sexual union, as in Adam and Hawa. So again, the mere fact that the Torah mentions that Adam yada et Hawa, that he knew Eve, even though you read in English Knew, which spells the English word knew, I need you to keep in mind that the Hebrew from which that comes from is yadal, and yadal in Hebrew denotes the union of that which is spiritual and intellectual, and the union of that which is physical. So wherever we find the term da'at, it represents the union of that which is spiritual or intellectual, or the union of that which is physical. And in this case, I'm going to say both is true. In this case, I'm going to say that both is true. And I'm going to give some substance as to why I say both is true. I think the Torah opens up by describing, and I think it's helpful to emphasize, this is the very first sexual union that the Bible describes. Everybody is aware of that. This is the very first time that the Bible describes any type of sexual intimacy or any type of sexual union. With that on the table, notice that the word that the Torah first employs to describe or denote sexual union is not the word that we normally encounter, right? The word denoting lying down, right? When the Torah usually speaks of a sexual encounter, it'll speak of the two laying together. And if a man lay with his brother, or lay with the wife of his brother, if a man lay with a man as another man, it always uses that term.
Right.
But when it comes to this, when it came to describe the very first sexual union ever in the Torah's narrative, it uses da'at, which is the confluence or the unifying of wisdom and understanding. And I believe that was done by design. I believe the reason why the Torah uses da'at as a descriptor of the very first sexual union is to denote that when we come together as men and women, as male and female, to make a family, the very first thing that we should be united is in spirit and intellect. So in a sense, the Torah is leading by example in using this particular word because it's trying to suggest, or it's trying to literally tell you, that all sexual unions should first be based on a connection in spirit and a connection in mind. Not that I saw this sister and she's so bad, woo, I can't wait. Not that I saw this brother and he's so fine, woo, I can't wait. But the thing that should be a precursor to sexual intimacy is that we had a meeting in the mind. We had a meeting in the spirit. So if you notice, the Torah's choice of words, Moses' choice of words, is actually setting the standard for all future sexual encounters. You should first unite in mind. You should first unite in spirit. You should have things that are in common that have nothing to do with carnal desire. You should have things in common that have nothing to do with fleshly desire. Before you join with a person physically, at the least bit, you should have made a spiritual and intellectual connection. And that is the main reason or the focal reason why you see da'at there. Secondly, da'at literally describes union. So Adam and Eve are also physically coming together. And that is the additional reason why you have yada used here. But the reason why I'm taking my time to emphasize these is to let you guys know, bar none, no matter how you cut it, no matter how you slice it, looking at the Hebrew, Adam is certainly the father of Cain. And that is the main idea that the Torah is pointing out. Because it begins by saying, We ha'adam, and not just an Adam, and the man, right? Because we say an Adam, meaning we're using the term Adam as a name, as a personal name. The Torah doesn't use Adam here as a personal name of Adam, because the term Adam is prefixed by the letter He, which is the definite article. And so it says, and the man, not and the Adam. So I hope everybody's clear on that. The Torah is not personally addressing Adam on that level. It's not using the term Adam as a personal name. It's actually far more generalized. And you get that from the letter He, which is used as a prefix, right? The letter He denoting the definite article, which is the English word the word of specificity. So it says, and the man knew Chawa, his wife, and she conceived, and she bore Cain, Watomer, saying, Quaniti, I have acquired a man et Yehovah, with the Lord. I have acquired.
And just to interject real quick, the only man known in that time was Adam.
That's a fact.
So when it says, when it's using the definite article of Ha, there's only one man at that time created. Right. So we know who it's talking about. That's it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Good point. Great point. All right, let me move on, because when we delve in this topic, right, with a little bit more veracity, you really don't start at Genesis chapter 4. Genesis chapter 4 describes the birth of the birth of Cain and Abel and the story that comes from that. Mm-hmm. But the real story behind Cain being the seed of the serpent goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 3. So allow me to do that. Let me take you to Genesis chapter 3, and let's focus on the dialogue between Nakash and Eve, or the serpent and Eve. All right? Is there anything you would like to say just before we open on this dialogue, Chief, on this point?
The only thing that I would say is that a lot of the arguments are that the Bereshit story is what they don't like to say allegory, but that's what they're saying in so many words. They're saying that basically Moses was not there. And a lot of it is conjecture, is people's opinions. But right. Basically Moses was not there, so he wouldn't really know exactly what was happening, or you have to look into it deeper than just what it says. You know, right. And I don't want to misquote anybody, but that would take us into a whole different rabbit hole of thoughts and idea, because if you want to say that's metaphorically speaking, then you have to take everything else a metaphor that Moses wrote, and you can't take certain things literal. You understand what I'm saying? So
that's a fact.
That's basically, especially coming from a community that values things being literal and not whatnot. So that would take us down a rabbit hole that I don't think that some people understand, that would leave you in a bad stead when it comes to other doctrines that we don't believe in. right? Because then you would have to open up the door to everything. You would have to open up Pandora's box. You know,
That's
you
right.
have to open up the door to Sasquatch and to everything else. You know what I mean?
That's right. If
So
if that's the case, that would be, to be blunt, if Cain is the seed of the snake, right? If the snake impregnated Eve, then what is the difference in saying that a spirit impregnated Mary?
right, right.
To be blunt, what would be the difference?
Yep.
So the implications here are very telling, and this is why these stories have to be authenticated publicly and discussed publicly, because the implications, if we're going in a certain direction, can have some consequences that are going to be a reality resulting from those premises.
Absolutely.
All right, so let me read the text and see what it says, right? Weha nachash haya arum mikol chayat hasadeh. And the serpent was the most cunning beast from all of the beasts of the field, Asher Asa Yehovah Elohim, which the Lord God had made. Wayomer El Ha'isha, and the man said, scroll down. Wayomer El Ha'isha, and he said to the woman, Ki Amar Elohim, lo, tok lo, Michol Eitz Hagan. And the serpent said unto the woman, has the Creator said to you that you should not eat from all of the trees in the garden? Now, before I even get into Eve's response to the Creator, which is really what I want to get into, her reasoning, right, for why she ate the fruit, I have to first unpack the whole dialogue to set up this whole scenery, because the dialogue is a very powerful dialogue. The serpent starts out with a lie, because I got to ask you, Chief, did the Creator said to Eve, you can't eat, to Adam and Eve, that you can't eat from any of the trees in the garden?
No, he just said from the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
That's right. And clearly, Nakash knew it, right? He knew what the Creator said,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So if he knew what the Creator said, yet he still asked Eve what I would call a loaded question,
Right.
it's done with the intent to what? To deceive.
Right.
At first, the first deception that we have to realize here is he's trying to get her to betray the word of the Creator.
Right.
The Creator gave them an explicit commandment, right? A very explicit commandment, not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil,
Right.
right? And here comes Nakash talking about, did God certainly say to you that from all the trees in the garden you can't eat? Of course, he worded it wrong, but what he's trying to get her to do is entertain a dialogue about a commandment the Creator put a period behind.
Right.
There should be no dialogue about this topic. The Creator said what he said was understood, and that's that. The snake opened up with a very deceptive remark. He said explicitly, did God say that you can't eat from any of the trees in the garden? Which is something that the serpent or the snake himself knew for a fact God did not say. But the greater scheme, or the true intent of Nachash, what he was actually trying to do, was first throw the hook and line and sinker at Eve by getting her to entertain a dialogue behind a conversation that the Creator put a period behind. That was her first mistake. And I always tell people, when we're reading the Torah, we should not be reading it like it's only a history book. Because if you're reading it like it's only a history book, you are missing the message that's in those histories for us today. The Torah is a moral guide, right? The Torah takes the history of our ancestors and uses it as a moral guide. So the message so far is, we don't entertain any dialogue that the Creator put a period after. And when the Creator tells us not to do something, just by entertaining those who are trying to further the dialogue on what the Creator said not to do. Just by giving ear to it, just by entertaining it, you are setting yourself up for sin. That's the message so far in the story. Let me continue. And then it says, Watomer ha'isha el nachash. And the woman said to the snake, Me peri eitz hagan nochel. No, from the fruit of the tree in the garden, from the fruit we may eat. We may eat from the fruit of the tree in the garden.
Right.
But here is what she don't realize. Remember, and here is what we need to emphasize. So let me say it again. Here is what she doesn't realize, and here is what we have to emphasize. Remember, the Torah opens up the dialogue by telling us that the serpent, or Nachash, was the most cunning or shrewd beast out of all the beasts that the Creator had created. It was the most cunning, which means it was the most deceptive.
Subtle, right.
Subtle, right? Deception, right? The deception is very subtle. I like that English word, subtle. The deception was very subtle. The idea is deception. It was the most deceiving of all of the creatures that the Creator had created. So the dialogue opens up with deception. The snake knows that God didn't say you can't eat of any of the trees. He knows that the Creator was very specific and only spoke of one particular tree that they could not eat from. So he opens the dialogue with deception, and rather than Eve seeing that, she entertains the dialogue and begins to respond to him as if his inquiry is earnest and genuine, which means she's not able to see the deception. She's blind to deception. She can't even see it at this point. Again, the message to us is when we entertain dialogues, right, which go against the express or the explicit will of the Creator, we are blind to the deception behind it. We are blinding. We cause ourselves to be blind by the deception by simply entertaining the dialogue. Let me keep going. Then it says, Umi peri ha'etz asher betok hagan amar Elohim, lo toklu mimemnu, we lo take u, bo pain temunu tun. It is only about the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, you shall not eat of it or touch it, lest you die. Second question, Israelite family. When did God say don't touch it?
Never said that.
Exactly. Israelite family online, did the Creator tell Adam and Eve that they couldn't even touch it? Or did he simply say to them that they couldn't eat it? I want to make sure that the family is clear. So I'm going to draw from you guys as well. Did the Creator tell Adam and Eve that they cannot eat it and touch it? Or did he simply tell them they can't eat it? Hopefully it's the former. Excuse me, hopefully it's the latter. Hopefully it's the latter. Hopefully everybody knows that the Creator simply said not to eat it. He never said not to touch it. So would it be fair to say, Chief, that when Eve said to the serpent that God said not to touch it, would it be fair to say that that was an adding to the commandments?
Yeah, that was you mean when the serpent told Eve not to touch it?
Right. No. Because Eve said, Eve's response now in the fourth verse.
Yes. Yeah, that was somewhat adding because that's not what the Creator said. He said just don't eat of it.
Exactly. Now, you know, in my Torah classes, I always tell people that this is not actually a bad thing. In our tradition, or if I could say in our oral tradition, this is referred to as building a fence around the Torah. Building a fence around the Torah, which is adding additional prohibitions so as not even come close to approaching sin. The only problem is the same oral tradition that tells us or teaches us to have fences or to build fences around the Torah is the same oral tradition that tells us beware of the fences that you build around the Torah, lest you build yourself outside of it. I'm going to say that again. The same oral tradition that tells us to build and construct fences around the Torah is the same oral tradition that says, beware of the fences you build around the Torah, lest you build yourself outside of it. And what that means is part of the success and accomplishment that you get when you keep a commandment by either abstaining from that which is wicked or exerting yourself to perform something righteous. Part of the accomplishment of that is the idea that you were faced with challenge, is the idea that you were faced with temptation. By building too big of a fence, by building too strong of a barrier, you take away the challenge. You take away the temptation. So you take away part of the success and the accomplishment in the mission. The Creator has these commandments in place so that they exalt us in character and essence, so that they promote us in rank and file in a spiritual nature. And by us adding, right, prohibitive measures to kind of lessen that actually takes away from the accomplishment.
Right.
Hence why the oral Torah also says, beware of the fences you build around the Torah, lest you build yourself outside of it. So Eve's mistake here wasn't simply that she added to the law, and she definitely added to the law, right? The serpent used the fact that she added to the law to his liking or to his credit. You're going to see it actually helped his argument. But first, I want to make sure that everybody is clear that Eve adding to the Torah by building that fence was not wrong. How do we know it wasn't wrong? When we go to Genesis 3:15, where God is punishing where God is punishing Adam, the serpent, and Eve for what they did, before God punishes them, he lays out their crime. He says, because you have did this, this shall happen to the serpent. Then he says to Adam, because you listened to your wife, this shall happen. And he says to Eve, because you did this, this shall happen. So before he punishes them, he always lays out their crime. When the Creator meted out his punishment to Eve, he never said, and because you added to the Torah, here is your punishment. And because you added to what I said to you, here is the punishment. So that is our key marker in the story that lets us know Eve actually building a hedge or building a fence around that commandment by saying, and to be clear, it's quite possible that this was given to her from Adam. It's quite possible, because if Adam didn't say that, then certainly the Creator could have came and singled out Eve, but he doesn't. Nor does Adam say anything to Eve about this. He doesn't. So it's quite possible, and I'm just giving conjecture, it's quite possible that Adam is the one that instituted this hedge around the Torah. Remember, it's only Eve that's having a dialogue with him. So because Eve is the one saying it doesn't mean that it didn't come from Adam. So it's possible, in my opinion, based on conjecture, that Adam is the one that built this hedge around this commandment so as not to come close to sin. And notice that it wasn't a bad thing to do, because if it was bad, once again, before the Creator judged the serpent, before he judged Adam, and before he judged Eve, he told all three of them what their crime was. And he never charged Eve with adding to the Torah, which means building that hedge wasn't the problem. But just like it says in the oral tradition, beware of the hedges or the fence you build around the Torah, lest you build yourself outside of it. And now let me unpack for you why her adding to the Torah with that hedge helped the serpent's argument. Watch this. Her response says, now, it is only about the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, you shall not eat of it, nor shall you touch it. Soon as she brought up that preventative hedge, touch, Nakash knew he got her, because Nakash heard everything God said. And he knew for a fact the Creator never said that you couldn't touch it. So what does the first thing that Nakash do? He said, and the serpent said to the woman, you're not going to die. The Creator knows that as soon as you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for eating and a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable as a source of wisdom, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave some to her husband, and he ate. Now, I have heard in times past and even recent that Eve herself was comparable to the tree, so that there are some that believe that the tree in question that was consumed is Eve. And with all due respect, I'm going to have to say I obviously disagree with that statement, because the very language of the Torah makes a separation between Eve and the trees in the field.
Right, right.
It makes a separation. It says, when the woman saw that the tree was good for eating and a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was a desirable source of wisdom, she took of its fruit and ate. Not hers, not from herself, but from its.
From it, that's right.
So clearly the language of the Torah is making a distinction, or i.e., making a separation between Eve and the snake. And again, believe it or not, there are teachings out here that suggest that the tree in question, one of them, is in fact Eve. And I'm going to say that that's not in line with the language of the Torah, right? Even if you want to read it in the Hebrew is not saying that at all. At all. Why tikwak? And she took mi peru, mi pero tokal, and she took from its fruit, not from her fruit, from its fruit. You see the wav as a suffix in the word for fruit, mi pi ru or mi pi ro. That means he, him, his, or its. The letter wav as a suffix means he, him, his, or its. If it was talking about something that was on Eve, or if it was talking about Eve, it would have been worded mi para, from her fruit. But it says from its fruit, making a distinction between Eve and the source of the fruit, the tree. Is that clear, Chief?
Cain. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And you know that there are some teachers out there that teach that the both trees are Eve. It's a metaphor for choice.
Right.
That is a metaphor for choice. The two trees, right? So I don't know how that's possible when it says she took of the fruit and then she did give unto her husband. So that's that's something that they will have to explain in detail and try to make people understand, because it doesn't make any sense to me. It still doesn't make any sense to me at this time. It didn't make sense to me. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to agree with you, and I'm going to agree based on one solid point that may have even been overlooked.
What's that?
If both of the trees, right, are an allegory for two diametrically opposed choices within Eve herself,
right,
a decision to do that which is good, follow what the Creator says, and a decision to do that which is wrong, to disobey what the Creator says, then that would mean at this particular time in history, she has the ability to make a distinction between good and evil, right? Which, if you're really paying attention, that did not come before partaking of the tree. So that would actually suggest or entail that she had that power, right, before partaking of the fruit. Remember, in line with the text, until she actually partook of the fruit, she did not have that character trait. She did not have that ability, nor her nor Adam, to discern between. Because remember, immediately after they partake of the fruit, they
Their
begin to
eyes were
look at
open.
each other with carnal desire.
Right.
Hence, the Torah says that the eyes of them both were open and they
Right.
perceived that they were naked. Obviously, they knew that they were naked the whole time, but
But it
with this
wasn't.
newfound knowledge and discernment between good and evil, this is the first time that they looked at each other with carnal desire and began to objectify one another. You know how our women, our sisters speak of not wanting men to objectify them, seeing them as mere objects, looking at their behinds and their tops and objectifying them. The first time that Adam and Eve laid eyes on one another in a carnal way and began to objectify one another is after they partook of that. So if this tree or those two trees represented different modes of thought or different decisions, the decision to entertain good and the decision to entertain evil prior to the eating of the fruit, then that also is diametrically opposed to the Torah's narration, because the Torah says that those things had to have taken place after the consumption of the fruit, not before. She would have been incapable of coming to that decision before partaking of the fruit.
Right.
All right. Let me go on.
Absolutely.
Let me go on. So it says, and she saw that the tree was good for eating and a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable as a source of wisdom. And notice that tree is in the singular, not the plural. The tree in the singular was desirable as a source of wisdom. She took of its fruit and ate. She also gave some to her husband, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were open, and they perceived that they were naked. And they sewed together fig leaves and made themselves loincloths. I have a question, Chief. Why
Cain.
didn't they make how do we say help me out, Chief. How do we say what's an even more common term that we use for clothing? Not beged, the other one. Katonet.
Katonet, yeah.
Why didn't they wear a katonet? A katonet would be a covering that covers the body overall.
Right, overall.
Like from head to toe.
Right.
Right? Why does the Torah state that they made a katonet? The
Right.
Torah emphasizes that after partaking or consuming the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that they sewed together loincloths,
Right.
which were garments designated to cover their sexual parts.
Right.
That is because of the carnal awakening within them that took place, right? This is the first time now that they're objectifying one another, that they're seeing one another with carnal eyes. Let me keep reading.
It's almost like prior to that, you know how little kids could run around, boy and girl, they have no knowledge of any of that carnal stuff, and they
That's
could run
right.
around naked and run outside and don't care and have no
That's right.
have no care for that, right? And then as soon as they hit an age, like, little girls or boys hit an age, that's, they're covering themselves, they hiding, they don't want people to see them. Before that, your daughter will run out the bathroom, butt naked.
That's right.
When she's 2 years old, she has no knowledge of that. She's just free. Your son will run out butt naked. They have no knowledge of that. This was the state that I believe that Adam and Eve were in before they partook of that fruit.
Facts.
Right? And then after that, it was like a whole shift in their mentality, like, oh, this is what it is. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And I do understand that I desire you and you desire me, and that's when they said, oh, hold up, let's cover this up. You know what I mean? I don't want you to see the flagpole keep raising up,
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's absolutely right.
Right.
So let's read furthermore. It says, they heard the sound of the Creator manifesting or moving about in the garden at the breeze of the day, and the man and his wife hid from the Lord among the trees of the garden. The Lord called out to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" He replied, "I heard the sound of you in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." He asked, "Who told you that you were naked?" Now, again, the implication, if you're reading this on the baseline, is that Adam and Eve were blind to something.
Right.
The question really is, were they blind so that they couldn't see anything, or were they blind to a certain idea? And I think it's clear that it's the latter. They were blind to a certain idea because Adam named every living creature
Absolutely.
before this took place.
Absolutely.
And the Bible says the Creator brought every living creature
And
before
he gave them a
Adam.
name.
Adam observed them and named them. He observed and named them. He had to have been looking at them. So he was not blind.
He wasn't physically blind. Right?
Physically blind, but he was blind to an idea, meaning having no knowledge, no experience with a particular idea. This is why the Creator emphasizes, who told you you were naked? Because the Creator is the one that designed man, and he knew that he did not give man this particular level of cognition, the discernment between good and evil. Man did not have carnal desire at that point. Let me keep reading. He said, and that's why he immediately says, "Did you eat from the tree which I had forbidden you to eat?" The man said, "The woman you put at my side, she gave me of the tree, and I ate." Again, if this represents or represented two oppositional choices within woman, then this sentence right here would make no sense. Because Adam says in this verse, "The woman you put at my side, she gave me of the tree and I ate." Again, making a distinction between Eve and the tree. So in more than one place, in several places in this narrative, the Torah continues to make a distinction between Eve and the tree. And that is clear from the language. All right. And the Lord said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" The woman replied, and I want to read that Be'ivrit. "Vayomer Yehovah Elohim la isha," and the Lord God said to the woman, "Mazot asit, mazot asit, what is this that you have done?" Watomer ha'isha, and the woman said, "Hanachash hishi ani wa'ochal," and the serpent deceived me, and I ate. I got a question for you, Chief. You have been around in the community longer than me. I'm only pushing about year 28, and you already on year 32 in the Israelite community, correct?
Cain.
All right. With that being said, I have this to throw at you really quick. Have you ever heard in all your years in knowledge of self that when the woman said that the snake deceived me, have you ever heard that the word for deceive, which is he, she, ani, that word entails some kind of sexual intimacy between the snake and the serpent?
I've believed that I've heard that throughout. Some teachers have taught that, but that doesn't entail that.
I almost spit up my water. I'm glad I didn't, because this is a brand new laptop. Yes, that is absolutely incorrect. It is incorrect, and I'm gonna blow up the word more so that the people who read Hebrew could see that word clearer in the screen as well. So let me do this. All right, so here we go. There's the word Hishiani, right? And in the Hebrew community, we do have people that know Hebrew, that can read Hebrew, and we have elders and learned people that even teach Hebrew. So Hishiani is a verb. And we know that the biblical Hebrew language has 7 major verb stems, right?
Right.
To quantify what's going on here, the first thing that any Hebrew reader or teacher would do is attempt to parse the verb. Right? So the verb is he, she, ani. And we want to ask ourselves, what verb tense is represented here, right? You have the letter he prefixed with a kirik. You have the letter shin with a kirik. Then you have yod, patak, and you have kirik under the noon, patak under the aleph, and then the letter yod with no consonant. And that gives us the vocalization he, she, ani. This word is in what we call the hifil verb stem, or the hifil verb tense. The hifil verb tense is an active verb stem, right? We call it the active voice, and the mood is causative, or the action is causative. It's the active voice, and the mood is causative. Active Hebrew verb stems denote that the subject of the sentence is doing something. Being that the mood is causative, we're now saying that the subject of the sentence is causing something to happen. The root of this word is shi'an. Shi'an. That is to deceive. The hifil, or the letter he prefix to it, is adding the notion that someone is causing deception. So what Eve is simply saying is that the serpent's words caused her to be deceived. She never said that the serpent actually physically lay with her on any level. So
What
to
they,
all
and Chief, and what they say is, with the word nasha, from what I've heard in some circles, is like seduced. The serpent seduced her,
and
so
he
this
did.
is, yeah. So, but they're saying he seduced her in a beguiling way, right? In order to get her to partake of the fruit,
Right.
right? So she partook of the fruit, but what they're saying is that it was a sexual innuendo there, right? With the
Right.
seduction, because they're playing on words. Like, if we hear seduced today,
Right.
right? What's the first thing you think of?
Unfortunately, because of Western literature, you
Right.
think of a sexual connotation.
Of a sexual connotation. And that
Right.
her partaking of the fruit was her
And
accepting the sexual advances.
and let me add this, Chief.
Okay.
If you ask a team, or if you ask a panel of Harvard students to give a definition of seduce or seduction, versus asking most people without a formal education, most people without a formal education, when they hear seduce, they think sex.
They think sex,
Because most people have a limited scope when it comes to the nuances in definitions of words,
right.
in part because we lack formal education or higher education.
Right.
So that we're one-dimensional in seeing things, in part because of the lack of education.
Lack of education.
So one of the things that has to be acknowledged is some of the earliest people that have suggested these things is in fact because they looked at it one-dimensional and said it can only denote sexual seduction. But if you ask a Harvard panel to explain seducing, seducing is similarly utilizing any device to sway someone's judgment or opinion.
Right.
That device can be in the form of soothing words, language. That attention device that can be used can be a physical demonstration of body language, such as sexual seduction. But it is not limited to the scope of any sexual device. It can also be intellectual, right? For instance, we know that sometimes or often when a woman is deeply entranced by the message or word of a man, some people describe that as that man making love to her mind. Have you ever heard such a phrase before? Absolutely. To her mind. That's why I say the word seduction is still true but it's mental. It's a mental stimulation. It was never physical.
Right.
Furthermore, the Bible makes it clear, let everything beget after its own kind.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how you cut it or slice it, if you get a snake to lay with a woman in some way, that's not going to produce a child. Some of the very same people teaching us know that this teaching would be incorrect because it doesn't fall in line with the teaching that says everything after its own kind.
But remember, Chief, we're understanding it from the basis of what we're reading it. The way they're trying to explain it is that the serpent is not really a serpent; it's a divine being. Because when you get to Nehushtan, right, or when you get to like they use, and let me go with you real quickly to if I may, I had it right here. I think it's Genesis chapter 44. Genesis,
Okay, I'll pull that up really quick.
yeah,
Genesis 44.
yeah, Genesis 44.
Also, just know the StreamYard gives you the ability to share your screen too.
Okay, but I'm far away from that computer, so
Okay.
I'll let you share. So 44 verse 15,
Okay.
right? So Genesis 44 verse 15 reads, and Joseph said unto them, what deed is this that ye have done? Will ye not that such a man as I can certainly divine? So the word for divine in this chapter is
Akash.
yeah, when achesh ish asher harmony or ki nachesh ye nachesh, right? So
Right.
now they're saying because the word is divine, right? And when we're talking about Nachash at the beginning, that the Nachash is not actually a serpent, but it's a divine being or a celestial being that basically the same story, basically was on earth and deceived the woman into having sex with her. That was the whole exchange of the partaking of the fruit. And from that union came Cain.
That's right. That's right.
So
And which is
so
it?
this
Which
is
is
so
which is
so
ig-
I want everyone to understand where the idea come from, where it's shaped from, how the words are being used to come to this conclusion, right? And in certain parts of our community. There's other
Right.
ways that people look at it, but all I could tell you is what I've heard throughout the years and how people have taught this lesson, right? So you could continue. I just wanted to inject that into what you were going to go into next.
Absolutely. And if now I could interject, I would simply say this now. So if we examine Genesis 44 and 15, where it uses the term nachash or nachesh to denote divination, right? Divination. And then
Right,
using that to denote that the serpent was a celestial being. Like we literally don't have to come all the way to Genesis 44 to
right,
denote that the serpent was a celestial being, right? Like this, we can literally go back to the story and unpack and see that. We can understand that.
right,
But to come here and look at Nachash or Nachesh and say that because it represents divination, that this is a reminder that the Nakash is also a celestial being. And I say to that, so what? So what? The Nakash is a celestial being. It still has to follow the explicit command of the Creator.
okay,
It is still under the control of the Creator, right?
right,
Right. And regardless of whether or not Nahash has that connotation of denoting divining, the reality is the Torah says that the serpent, he, she, ani, it deceived Eve.
right,
That's it. That's it. And
right,
if we're talking about a deception that entails sexual innuendo, then the Torah needs more emphasis for that point. And there's no emphasis in the narrative to enhance or strengthen that point. And here's what I want to really say about that. And I know that in our community we have differences on this, but I still have to mention it. This is one of the dangers of not having a central teaching, a centralized view on the Torah. This is the very premise of why we have an oral tradition, because each man reading the Torah will see something different. We all know when we bring up topics like this and we have a round table in our temple, when you go around the room, for every 2 or 3 people, you got a different opinion. But there's only one opinion that's true. But the reality is, for every 2 or 3 people surveying the intellectual content, we're going to have 3 to 4 different opinions. So when the Creator gave the Torah to Moses, he didn't simply say to Moses, here, give it to them, and I hope they figure it out. In Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 28 in the English Bible and verse 31 in the Hebrew Bible, the Creator said to Moses, teach them the commandments. He never simply said, I hope they figure it out. He said, teach them the Torah. We don't have anywhere in the Torah where we can find 613 teachings that Moses gave for all 613 commandments. So this is the point that I like to stress and I like to emphasize. The dialogue that we're having right now about the many different ways that we could see this one particular passage is in part responsible to our irresponsibility in not realizing or fully comprehending the need for a central teaching in Torah. When are we going to figure out that without a centralized teaching, each man will see the Torah with a different eye view and with a different lens, according, or in other words, similar to the era of Joshua, where it literally says, and each man did that which is right according to his own eyes. That's the same view that we have when we read the Torah. Everybody sees something slightly different. And guess what? Everybody's not right. This is why our ancestors left on record a centralized teaching of how the Torah is to be understood. And that teaching explicitly was handed down to Moses. And remember, I have to emphasize this, Deuteronomy 5 and 28 in the English Bible and Deuteronomy 5 and 31 in the Hebrew Bible say that God explicitly told Moses not only to give us the Torah, but to teach it to us. So I have a question for everybody listening. Yes, we can open the Torah and find all 613 commandments, but where can we find the 613 explanations that Moses was enjoined to give us for each of those commandments? And that's the problem with the Israelite community. Until we realize that there's a centralized teaching for the Torah, we're going to continue to argue and debate about things that should be centrally understood because we're reading from the same book. Let me go to Deuteronomy 3 on this one now and pick up back where I left off. Because it's about to get sweet to the point now where it says, and the woman said that the serpent deceived me, right? That the serpent duped me and I ate. She made it clear that the root cause was the serpent deceiving her. Intellectual deception.
You say you're going to Deuteronomy 3 or Genesis 3?
My apologies. Genesis 3. I think is Genesis 3 is open on the screen?
Yes, Genesis 3 is open on the screen.
Yes. Genesis 3, my apologies.
Okay.
So as we see in Genesis 3 and 14, she makes it clear that it's intellectual deception. The Torah also makes it clear that it's intellectual deception because in the snake or Nakash's dialogue with Eve, you don't see anything except for a dialogue. There's nothing in that dialogue between the snake and the woman that suggests a sexual encounter. Nothing. Did I miss something, Chief?
No.
I just want to be clear. Nothing. So now let me go into my PowerPoint and let's really have some fun. So one of the teachings that I heard over the years is that Eve had fraternal twins. that Cain and Abel are twins. And if I can add to that, let me tell you guys, I do actually believe that Cain and Abel are twins. And it can be proven right in the narrative. Right after Cain is born, the Torah says, and additionally, she bore Abel. And additionally, that's a twin birth. That's a second birth happening simultaneously. That's not another moment in time. When the Bible goes into discussing things that are disconnected in time, it makes it clear in the language. It does not do that when discussing the birth of Cain and Abel. One immediately follows the other. The Torah literally uses the term, and additionally she bore. Matter of fact, before I share the PowerPoint, let me just emphasize that point for you guys. Let me show it so everybody can see. Because I do want to be honest. I don't want to be deceptive myself. I think some of the argument that's presented is on point, but obviously I disagree with the bulk of the argument. So here is part of the argument that I think is correct. I do believe that Cain and Abel are twins, and I believe Genesis chapter 4 is the proof of that. It says, and I'll read this nice and loud. In Genesis 4:1, it says, "We ha Adam yada et Chawa," and Adam knew Chawa, Ishto his wife, Watahar, and she conceived, Wateled, and bore et Chayin, Cain, and she said, "I have acquired a man with the help of the Lord." Now, we see here a grammatic marker after the divine name of the Creator, which is what we call pasuk or pasok, which is like the Hebrew period. But what we all should know is that does not exist on a Torah scroll, nor was that ever on the original Torah writings. We never had this grammatic injunction, which serves as the Hebrew equivalent to a period. So this is not where the sentence ends and then verse 2 begins. It flows freely. Then it says, Watosef laledet et Aki et Havel. And additionally, she bore his brother Havel, which we call in English Abel. But notice the Torah says, and in addition to, tosif, which means adding to. That's describing twin birth. The Torah would not have described the birth of another child, which would have happened 11 months. Because if you're born 11 months apart from your sibling, you're considered a twin. What type of twin is that called again, Chief? You remember? If you're 11 months apart from your twin, your sibling, what do they call that? There's a word for that. Anybody in the chat room know what? If somebody could find that, pull that out for us. But there's a phrase for that. There's a term for that, right? If you're 11 months apart from your sibling, you're also called a twin. But there's a phrase that's attached to it, or a term that's attached to it. When you guys put it in the chat room, I'll point it out. But that's Irish not twins. Irish twins, right? If you're 11 months or 10 or 11 months apart from your sibling, you're called an Irish twin. And that's not even what we're dealing with here. We're not even dealing with Irish twins here. For instance, if everyone goes back to later on in Genesis, when the 12 patriarchs are coming into the narrative, when they're being born, the Torah separates their births. The Torah makes it clear that these men are born at different times. When it comes to describing the birth of Abel, however, it says, Wa Tosef, and additionally, Laladet, she bore his brother Abel. Additionally, Tosef in Hebrew means to add on. The Torah doesn't use that statement when it describes Simeon being born after Reuben, Levi being born after Simeon, and Judah being born after Levi. It doesn't say additionally. It separates those births with a space of time. But with regard to the birth of Abel, it uses the term tosef, additionally, to let you know that they are in fact twins, and their births occurred simultaneously, and that's why the word Tosef is used. And additionally, meaning there was one more child born during this pregnancy.
But doesn't
So
that word also means to do again?
Tosef, to do again?
Yeah.
No, I have never seen Tosef used to do again. I've seen unless there's a scripture that we could join it to see that. I've only seen Tosef to denote additionally and adding.
Let me see.
In fact, you know what? Let's pull it up in Bible Hub, right? Let's pull it up in Bible Hub so everybody could look at the root. I'm going to switch screens and show you guys Bible Hub. All right.
Yes.
All right, let's look it up now in Bible Hub. We are in Genesis. We want to go to 4th chapter. And we want to look at the Hebrew, right? Let's pull up the interlinear. And let's...
The root word on that is what? Let me see. I'm trying to again. Yosef. Yeah, why Yosef? Right. So then if we look in
Okay. The Strong's number on that is 3254. And watch this.
When you look at Genesis 8, verse 10, right? It speaks about Noah sending the dove out, and it says, and he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. So the word that is used for again is why Yosef.
Right, but that's in a different Hebrew verb tense. That's why it's Yosef and not Tosef.
All right.
Right, it's in a altogether different Hebrew verb tense. It says why Yosef. This one is why Tosef. Tosef is in the Hifil. Let me go back up and show you. So this is the word Tosef, right?
You mean the
and
one in Genesis 3 is Tosef?
Genesis 4 and 2, where it says, and she, in English it says, and she again bore his brother.
Tosef.
The word is Tosef. Right under it, you see it says it's the Hifil stem.
Right.
It's the Hifil stem, right? So the Hifil stem is saying, and another one was caused. Gotcha. Another one was caused, because Tosef means to add. And another one was caused to be added.
Right.
That's you. Right. Caused to be. Now, it couldn't have the connotation of again, because it wouldn't make sense as a sentence to say, and another one was caused again. It's talking about adding. Another one was caused to be adding. Right. That's why in looking at the root, right? Look, the root tells you to add. That's the primary meaning. We utilize the word again in English, right? Because of its English connotation, right? When you say again in English, it does carry the synonym of adding. But Tosef in Hebrew is used mostly to describe adding something, not just simply saying again, but adding. That's why you also see increasing, which is like adding, or exceeding, adding.
Cain.
Right? So that word gives us the connotation, or gives us the implication, I would say, that the birth of Cain and Abel were simultaneous births, meaning that they were, in fact, twins. And that's exactly what our oral tradition also says. So I definitely stand on that they were twins, right? So now let me point to the PowerPoint and pull this out. Because the same people making the argument that Cain is the seed of the snake, and Abel is the seed of Adam, are
Right.
saying that they were both twins,
Right.
except one was from Adam and one was from the snake. And
Right.
scientifically, that's possible. Watch this. Scientifically, there's something called superfecundation. Superfecundation, which occurs with fraternal twins. This is the fertilization of two or more ova from the same cycle by sperm from separate acts of sexual intercourse. Anybody ever watch that one Maury show years ago? Where it was Maury. That one show on Maury years ago, where a woman actually was impregnated. She was pregnant. She had twins, and she brought two men on the show. She didn't know who the father of the twins was, and Maury said he never had a show like this ever before because both of the men were the fathers. One of the men was a father to one of the twins, and the other man was a father to another one of the twins. And it's very rare, but it's very scientific. It's called superfecundation, which is the fertilization of two or more ova from the same cycle by sperm from separate acts of sexual intercourse.
That's a real
So,
nasty woman.
definitely. So, while I disagree with the argument that Cain is literally the seed of the serpent in the sense that the serpent had intercourse with Eve, I agree with the notion that Cain and Abel were in fact fraternal twins. I definitely agree with that they were fraternal twins. And let me unpack this some more. The serpent seed doctrine is a controversial religious beef which explains the biblical account of the fall of man by saying that the serpent in the garden mated with Eve and that the offspring of their union was Cain. This appears in the early Gnostic writings, such as the Gospel of Philip. So to the people in the Israelite community who are pushing this, lo and behold, that Christianity, in fact, the Roman Catholic Church, is the source of this teaching. That should alarm any Israelite who obviously teaches against following their teachings, right?
Right.
That should be a red flag.
Right.
Absolutely.
That should be a red flag because, I mean, controversial religious belief, which explains the biblical account of the fall of man by saying that the serpent in the Garden of Eden mated with Eve and that the offspring of their union was Cain. This appears in the early Gnostic writings such as the Gospel of Philip. So those are the books that didn't make it to the New Testament.
That's right.
So even the fathers of Christianity said that this is too out there for us to put in the book.
That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact. So here we go, man. Here we go. I'm gonna unpack it some more. It says, so one thing I also want to do. Where's my books? Excuse me. There's my books. So when you go to all right, when you go to the Zohar, book 1, when you go to a work known as the Zohar, book 1, in the portion known as Bereshit, you actually find the ultimate source of this teaching. Most of the people who are teaching that Cain is the seed of the serpent, they've never actually assessed the ultimate source. People are reading from books that were written in 1950s, in the 1960s, not even knowing that the ultimate source of the teaching is in an extra biblical work known as the Zohar. And that's what we're about to look at right now. The Zohar represents what is described as an esoteric explanation of the Torah's teachings. Torah, meaning the first 5 books. The Zohar represents an esoteric body of teachings on the first 5 books of the Torah. The Zohar is the source of the notion that Cain is the seed of the serpent. But the Zohar describes it differently than what the Christian writers took it, ran with it, and misinterpreted it as. Before I even read and quote what the Zohar says about it, allow me to first give a brief dissertation or explanation. The Zohar teaches that when men and when women, when we come together and unite to build a child, while the act is physical, something spiritual is still occurring. What we forget, right, in fathering children, in the mothering of children, in the creating of family, we forget that there's a third partner, the creator, or there's a third partner, meaning the divine. And the creator joins that union and gives what? Ruach. The mother and father come together to give the rudimentary elements, the base elements, the physical body. The creator joins that union to give what? The soul. The Zohar teaches us correctly, and I'm a follower of the teachings of the Zohar, by the way. I'm a follower, and I want to emphasize me. Not everybody takes to the teaching, but I do follow the teachings of the Zohar. The Zohar rightfully says that when 2 people conceive of children while in a state of sin, it will affect the character of those children, i.e., the spirit of those children. Remember, when Adam and Eve conceived both Cain and Abel, they were still under sin. Adam had not yet repented. None of this takes place yet. They were still under sin. The Zohar teaches us that, and you guys are going to see it in the quotation, whenever a man and a woman conceive of children during a state of deep sin, the product, meaning the children, will be reflective and representative of that sin as well. Why do you think Abel also died? Why do you think not just Cain wasn't called? Some people say that the reason why they know that Cain is the seed of the serpent, they say because when Seth was born, the Bible says, and he was born in the image of God. Okay, well, what about Abel? Because if Cain is the seed of the serpent, but Abel is the seed of Adam, it still didn't call Abel in the image of Adam. So I hope people are paying attention here. And let me go on and quote the Zohar. Can you guys see this screen? Or should I blow this up some more?
I mean, you could see it, but I mean, I'm sitting at a distance. I see highlighted portions, but I really can't read it from this far.
Okay.
I mean, but I'm at a distance, so from my computer, from my actual that screen where I could look at it. Let me look at my phone.
Let me see. Hold on. Let me see if
I'll tell you right now. Hold on. This is.
Let me see.
Yeah, it's still pretty small and.
We cooking with fire now, huh? We cooking with fire. Y'all can see that better?
Yeah, I think that'll work out better. Yep.
All right.
That's better.
All right. All right. Listen to this. I'm reading from the highlighted portion. And notice that it's a commentary on, and the man knew Eve, his wife. So watch this. Rabbi Abba discourse in connection with this verse on the text. Who knoweth the spirit of man, which goeth upwards, and the spirit of the beast, which goeth downward to the earth? He said this verse can bear many constructions. And so it is with all the words of the Torah. They can all bear several meanings and all good, and the whole Torah can be expounded in 70 ways, corresponding to the 70 sides and 70 wings. We will, however, expound thus. When a man walks in the path of truth, he goes towards the right and attracts to himself a Holy Spirit from above, which in turn ascends with holy intent to attach itself to the upper world and to cleave to the supernal holiness. When, however, a man walks in the path of evil, he draws to himself an unclean spirit belonging to the left side, which renders him impure. So it is written, ye shall not make yourselves unclean with... Chief, you may have to mute your mic.
Okay.
Getting a lot of background from you. Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. All right. It says, when a man walks in the path of truth, he goes towards the right and attracts to himself a Holy Spirit from above, which in turn ascends with holy intent to attach itself to the upper world and to cleave to the supernal holiness. When, however, a man walks in the path of evil, he draws to himself an unclean spirit belonging to the left side, which renders him impure. So it is written, you shall not make yourselves unclean with them, that you should be defiled with them. He that first defiles himself is led further into defilement. What is occurring here from the vantage point of the words of the Zohar is a very uncanny position that a lot of people are unfamiliar with simply because we reject these types of teachings, i.e., the oral tradition. But when you examine it, it's actually a very profound teaching. If you're walking in a path contrary to the will of the Creator, contrary to his spirit, what do you think you're attracting? Remember, even in the physical world, like attracts like. What your mama always told you coming up. Lie down with dogs and you're going to get what? Fleas. You all already know this. Even in the physical world, like attracts like. So if you are moving in a certain way, you're going to attract certain people. And that's just on a physical level. The question now is, what do you think you attract on the spiritual level? So this is the meaning behind the Zohar, literally stating that when a man, which includes woman, when we walk in paths contrary to the will of the Creator, we are attracting, right, elements beyond this world, because we do believe in the spiritual realm. We are spiritual people. We speak of angels, right? It always gets me about Israelites, right? If I was to suggest right now that when a person is wicked, they attract wicked spirits, a certain segment of Israelites are going to say, no, that can't be. But those same Israelites don't have a problem with talking snakes. They don't have a problem with a man being in the belly of a whale for 3 days. They don't have a problem with a donkey talking to a man, the story of Balaam. But if I say wicked people attract wicked spirits, now I'm wrong. It just goes to show you how when we close our eyes to being open-minded, our intelligence escapes us. I'm going to say that again. When we close our eyes to being open-minded, a significant level of our own intelligence escapes us, because this is totally in line with the scriptures. If you are moving contrary to the will of the Creator, what do you think that you attract? You're not attracting anything good, so you're obviously attracting that which is the polar opposite of good, evil. And because we know that we are spiritual beings first before we are physical, we know that we are attracting darker elements from what we can describe as the spirit realm or from the spiritual world. Let me go on. Because there's more to read. It says, contrawise, when the man goes to the side of the left and draws to himself the impure spirit and clings to it, he also draws a spirit of uncleanliness on the son that issues from him. Uh-oh! This is the part that y'all need to listen to. Listen to this. Heavy. It says, when the man goes to the side of the left and draws to himself the impure spirit and clings to it, he also draws a spirit of uncleanliness on the son that issues from him, so that he is like to be defiled from the impurity of the left side. And that is the reason why the Zohar refers to Cain as the seed of Nakash. Not that Cain is literally the seed of the serpent, but because Adam in spirit was still in sin, clinging on to sin, that sin attached itself unto his child. And it is in that respect that the Zohar says and describes Cain as being the seed of the serpent. And guess what? Y'all already know this. How I can say you already know this? When you act up in your parents' house and you do things that's totally contrary to his will, what both your parents start saying? Your father look at your mother and be like, come get your child. Your mother come look at your father and be like, come get your child. The father look at the mother and say, oh, that's from your side of the family. He acting like, what? Let's say the mother's name is Johnson. He act like them Johnsons. Let's say the father's last name is Jackson. The mother gonna say, yeah, that's them Jacksons. Not that the child literally came from a Jackson, not that the child literally came from a Johnson, but that child's attitude and behavior is reflective of people who are not like what we do. Christianity, early Christians had access to the Bible and had access to several of the oral traditions. Remember, the early church fathers are using Josephus's works as well. So they had access to these things. When they're reading into these things, they're adding their own interpretations and taking it far left. They read in the Zohar that Cain is the seed of the serpent, and without authenticating the way in which the Zohar described it, they automatically took that as extreme literal and said that Cain is literally the son of the serpent, when in fact, that is not what the Zohar said. Because as I pointed out, and I'll even point out again, it literally says when the man goes to the left side and draws to himself the impure spirit and clings to it, he also draws a spirit of uncleanliness on the son that issues from him. And guess what, guys? Y'all didn't have to read this in the Zohar, because the Torah says unto the third and fourth generation I will visit them. Why? Because there is some element of the iniquity of the father which is sticking to those children, i.e., there must be something in spirit connected to those children from the father's sin. Hence why it's built into the commandments, unto the third and fourth generation will I visit them. We don't got enough common sense in the Israelite community as a collective to connect these dots, because we're so marginalized with our views. We say that we're not religious, but we are religious. We say that we're open-minded, but we're very closed-minded.
You muted?
No.
Okay.
Let me go to the next page. Okay. I gotta make this smaller so I could get to the next page. Okay, too small. Okay. All right, now that we're on the next page, let me blow this up. Uh-oh, I think I missed it. Sorry, y'all. Hold on. This is a new computer, y'all, so please excuse me. But it reads, but when he cleaves to the left, the side of the left, which is the spirit of uncleanness, descends from above and fixes its abode in a man's body, and the son who he begets in that state of impurity is his son from that unclean spirit. Listen to the logic of the words of the Zohar. Listen to the logic. Listen to what's being said here. It says, when that man, meaning Adam, cleaved to the left side, the side of sin, the side of uncleanliness, an evil spirit descends from above and fixates its abode on his body. And the son who he begets in that state of impurity is his son, but from the evil, unclean side, from the evil and unclean spirit. So yes, it's Adam's son, but it's not Adam's son in the sense of Adam being created in the image of God. That doesn't occur to the birth of Seth. This is Adam's son while Adam and Eve are both still in a state of sin. So the soul is not representative of the soul that God gave Adam, which is after the image of God. This soul is after what is called the other side, or in the language of the oral tradition, the Sutra Akra. The Sutra, Sutra Akra, the Sutra Akra, an Aramaic term literally meaning the other side, which is an Aramaic term that's used post-Second Temple period as a reference to evil. As a reference to evil, it's called the other side or the left side. The other side or the left side. Notice, guys, there's a reason why the Torah employs certain anthropomorphism in reference to the Creator, right? The Torah speaks of the Creator having eyes. The Creator is not a physical being, so he doesn't have physical eyes. The Torah speaks of God having hands. He doesn't actually have hands, but it's used to denote his power and his strength in controlling the events in the world. In reference to the Torah, I need you to notice, it says in Deuteronomy 5, from the right hand of God came a fiery law. Why not the left? It said from the right hand of God, which I want to tell me God is right-handed? No. Spiritually speaking, there's a difference between describing something as coming from the right and coming from the left. The left always denotes on a spiritual level unclean, impurity, and the right represents that which is sacred, that which is holy. Hence it says, and the Torah came from the right hand of God and not the left hand. So when the Zohar says that Adam cleaved to the left side, is euphemistic language to describe that which is evil. Let me continue. And watch this. It says, and after Adam, let me blow this up a little bit or as much as I can. After Adam had repented, thus one was from the pure side and one from the impure. So Cain was born from the impure side and Abel was born from the pure side. This is what it says. When the serpent injected his impurity into Eve, she absorbed it. And so when Adam had intercourse with her, she bore two sons. And this passage right here in the Zohar, volume 1, 54a through 54b, is the ultimate source where people are saying that Cain is the seed of the snake. It comes from
this source right here, the main source.
This is the source. This is the main source. It comes from this grossly misinterpreted passage, which literally says, when the serpent injected his impurity into Eve, she absorbed it. And thus, when Adam had intercourse with her, she bore two sons. So people who are not familiar with allegorical language, figurative speech, they took this literal and thought that when the writers of the Zohar said that the serpent injected his impurity into Eve, that had to be a sexual encounter, that had to be physical, even all the while, everything we've been quoting in the Zohar so far is all deeply allegorical and nothing of it is literal. So why take this one part literal if everything we're reading so far is allegorical? So the source that they ultimately get it from is still a misappropriation of that which was said, because even the source that it came from never said that Cain was the physical son of the serpent, but the spiritual son of the serpent, because Cain was born during a time when both Adam and Eve were impure and unclean, and any child you have during that particular state will be reflective of the sins that you entertained. That is why a lot of y'all could relate to this. Why do you think a lot of parents are attached more to the younger babies? Y'all really think that most parents are attached more to younger babies simply because they're the last ones? Or did you not also simultaneously realize that the last children that are born also have more spiritually mature parents? Were you mature when you had your first child, your second child, your third child? Most parents know the best parenting they did was with their last born children because they were more spiritually mature. You want to add to that, Chief?
I wanted to say that in terms of what you said earlier about or what you're speaking about right now about passing down that evil and that wickedness to your children. It's like if you grow up in a family, like I know families of drug dealers. You know what I mean? Family of scammers and crooked people. You understand what I'm saying? So basically what the kids grow up seeing in the house is what develops in them and they carry it out. You get what I'm saying? So once they do that, it's like continuing in that sin. That's why it talks about that third and fourth generation of them that hate me, right?
That's a fact.
Because they're continuing in that sin, like how you were saying. But there is a point where if any one of those children ever change from that wrong or break that cycle, right? And do that which is right before the Most High God, it said that God will forget all that sin that they did, and he will judge them on the merit of the righteous deeds that they are continuing to do. You know what I'm saying? So that there is a salvation for that generational sin that could be passed down. There is a salvation. I just wanted to add that part to it. But you're absolutely right with the, when the children see the parents do certain things or there's a custom in the house or a tradition of the house of sin, then that sin could be passed down from generation to generation. And it's like everything that we do, the foods that we eat, sometimes, builds hypertension. Grandma pie recipe was loaded with butter, but she passed it down from generation to generation, not knowing that it's been killing everybody. And it's been killing everybody in the family because it's loaded with butter and everybody makes it with butter the same way, and you make a pie 2-3 times a week and it's killing you slowly. You know what I'm saying? So in many things we could pass down things that are detrimental to us as a people, spiritually and physically.
That's a fact.
Yes. And like somebody put, breaking generational curses. It's like the cycle of living in public housing. Your mother passed you down your mother, your grandparents passed down the apartment to your parents. Your parents pass it down to you, and everybody. It's the cycle of staying right in there. Not saying that public housing is bad or anything like that, but it's like if you get used to certain environment, you get used to something.
That's right.
As you just get passed down that same thing over and over and over and over again.
That's a fact. Being complacent in an environment that's adverse to your growth gotta be a sin. Mm-hmm. So I definitely agree with you. Agree with you. And again, like if we were to summarize, right, everything that we've said so far,
right,
it becomes crystal clear that the idea that Cain is the son of the actual snake, as if Eve and the snake had a real sexual encounter, it's based on Christian literature and commentary that grossly misappropriated older traditions that did have something to say about it. The older traditions are saying that Cain represents the spiritual son of the snake, and simply and why of the snake and not anything else? Because the snake represents the epiphany of evil in the story. In this story, the snake itself is representative of the epiphany of evil. Right. So, keeping in suit with that language, the writers of the Zohar say that Cain would necessarily be described as the son of the serpent simply because he was conceived in sin. And we all know the implications of being conceived in sin. Doesn't the Creator said who could bring, isn't it recorded right in the Bible, who could bring clean from an unclean?
Thing, right.
Come on. Come on. If Adam and Eve are engrossed in sin, you think the child that's coming from them is going to be the good king Josiah? You think the child coming from them is going to be Hezekiah? You think the child coming from them is going to be the Mashiach? No. It's going to be like most of the children we see in our community. Just as bad as your wicked mother and father, if not worse. Talk to me. Come on. We know this. We know this. But because we're spiritual people, we should be able to explain it enigmatically, which is the use of figurative speech and allegory. Right. The entire Torah employs that kind of deep esoteric cross between deep allegory and figurative language. Come on, the Bible opens up with a talking snake. And we all know snakes don't talk. So we know that there's allegory in the story. So if we know that there's allegory in the telling of the biblical narrative, then why would we suggest that the narration or the commentaries given on the biblical narrative are also not replete with allegory? So again, if I could surmise my thoughts on the topic, I would say the Bible is clear that Adam is the father of the snake. But the implication is there that because Adam was born, that Cain was born during a state when or conceived during a state of Adam and Eve being in deep sin, the implication is there that they weren't going to be the best children, or i.e., they already had a notch on their shoulder from the start. The implication is there. And that is simply what the ultimate source is saying. It is not saying that Cain is the physical son of the snake. So again, all people who are saying that Cain is the son of the serpent, they are getting these ideas from Christian misappropriated teachings of what the Zohar is saying, and even the Zohar is not even saying that. Anything you want to add or close with saying, Chief?
I'm very glad that we had this discussion. I definitely learned some things. Definitely gonna go back and look at some things and examine them. But definitely every time I sit down with you and we have these type of discussions, I enjoy listening to you. Even though we might not agree on everything, but I always give you the respect, and I go back and I listen and I try to do things with an objective mind, because I know that it's not just one way. So I'm really appreciative of this and covering this topic and getting everything straightened out and getting the understanding of where the story actually comes from, right? Because I'm not really, if people don't know, I'm not really a reader of the I don't read the Zohar. So a lot of this information I get it from my brother Zion Lex, my brother Chief Avdiel, and this crystallizes especially the understanding of where this is coming from. And the thing is that a lot of the people that might be teaching this might not be familiar with that passage or with that understanding, because I think if they were familiar with that, that makes a lot more sense what you're saying, right? Because we're talking about a spiritual, a spiritual thing, someone that could be passed on, a spirit, something that could be passed on. It's like, that's why strong liquor is called spirits, because it brings some things out of you that you don't know. Liquid courage. All of a sudden, you was a timid guy. All of a sudden, you got courage, and you can say what you want to say out of your mouth, and you become brave all of a sudden. It brings certain things out of you, and I think that when we look at what the Zohar said, it makes a lot more sense than Cain being physically the son of a serpent. That makes more sense in terms of a conversation where you can have a conversation and people will listen to you more. Right. Because that makes more sense. You took on the spirit of something that was subtle and deceitful. Right? And that child was subtle and he was deceitful. That makes more sense than to say that that child came from a union between a serpent and Hawa.
That's right.
So I think I definitely learned from that. I'm gonna probably talk to you behind the scenes so I could get that book myself and I could read it and get the full understanding of it, because it's about building, it's about and you can't say you disagree with something until you read it. So
That's a
first you
fact.
have to read it, and then you have to say, I agree with it or I disagree with it. So definitely thanking you once again for coming up here and doing this. I want to do this a little bit more often. Probably get different teachers, kind of get a mishnah from all the teachers that are out here, so that we can have this recorded in history to all the different thoughts and ideas of people and what they have, their opinions on these, specifically these matters that are controversial matters in our community. And
Yes.
that way we could build our own books, and people will see 100 years from now, this is how Chief Avdiel taught, this is how Rabbi Chief Benjamin taught, this is how Samar Zakar or this one or Chief Uziel thought about these different matters. And it still might be different opinions, but guess what? We're still learning. You know
That's
what I'm
right.
saying?
That's right.
We're still learning. So I thank you once again, my brother, and I thank you for this opportunity. Hopefully we could continue to do something like that and something like this, and continue to build the understanding of our people, and bridge the gap between us and the younger generation that's coming behind us, that solely needs this understanding and needs this spirit.
That's right. Likewise, Chief. I definitely, always appreciate those moments that we can interact, those moments where we can really come together and have a real bill. For quite some time now, I can even say for a long time now, some of the more significant conversations I've had in the community tend to have been when I sat down with you. And a lot of people notice that. So I look forward to doing more shows with you on a
Right,
weekly basis, and
right.
hopefully, we can make a habit out of this, and we can invite more learned people and have this
Definitely.
grow.
Definitely, I agree with that, because it's time for us to grow. I've always been, although I've come up under a different way, and I've always seen you've always gone out there and you swim out to the deep part of the sea. You know what I mean? I tend to stay on the shore, but it don't mean because you swim out that you doing something wrong. It just means
Right.
that you more fit to get out there. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate that, and I always come to you for a lot of the stuff that I might not know, and I'm not afraid to say that, that you're a brother that I learned a lot from. So that's a blessing in itself, and I'm glad that we had this opportunity. So hopefully we could do this on a weekly basis with certain parashot that are set aside. Next week, I don't know what we could get out of Noach, but let's see what we could get out of it.
We could definitely do that, man. We could definitely do that. I would love that, Chief. So I look forward to it. Thank you very much. I also want to shout out the moderators in the building. Thank you to
Hallelujah.
everybody that stopped by. Thank you to all of you who've been tuning in. Northern Bell, Yirmi Yahoo, EJ Mitchell, Ashley, Israel. Ashley, congratulations too. Tonight was your first night in the Hebrew class, and look at you. You all in here with a wrench. You go ahead. You go ahead with yourself. You go ahead. And Miss Chanda, thank you so much. My brother EJ Mitchell, 10 toes on the ground, solid as always. Moray Yirmiyahu, I see you, my brother, my brother, my brother. Junior, hey Junior, I need some red pea soup. That's that red pea soup that Jacob had to make for Esau. I keep telling y'all, I believe that was red pea soup, man. All right, Chief. I'm gonna let you close out the live, Chief.
Hallelujah. Thank you, the Most High God, once again. May the Most High God bless and keep us all, and may He continue to give us knowledge and understanding and wisdom in order to edify God's people. Hallelujah.